The Lord of Darkness, Part 2, Chapter 9, Gabriel in Hell. Back in the present, I wasn't sure what to do in Nick's absence, so I decided to swing by Hector's office to see if he needed any assistance with demon operations. I asked a passing demon for directions, and he told me, "It's real close. Down that hall, 2 rights, 4 straight, 1 left, a straight, 2 rights, and an up. You can't miss it." Needless to say, I got lost several times on the way. On the positive side, I got to see quite a bit of a hell I hadn't spent much time in previously, which is exactly why I didn't teleport. I don't much care for teleporting into a place I've never seen before. Although unharmful, it's uncomfortable to materialize partway through a solid object. As I've mentioned before, humanity's hell is very much like a cavern that fully functions as an office building and living quarters equipped for billions. I stuck to the business section. Many of the rooms were strictly practical, with the stalagmites forming tables and chairs. One room had a conference table that, despite being perfectly level, was ingrained with stunning veins and pools of color. A giant slab of gneiss had been meticulously layered, then subjected to extreme heat to form a semi-precious labradorite that was so bright it almost glowed. At first, I was merely captivated by the brilliant colors, but as I traced my finger along the table's surface and gazed into its semi-transparent depths, I was filled with a nagging sense of familiarity. I blinked and suddenly saw what I was looking at. The patterns formed a perfect scale model of the Orion Nebula. I walked into another room specifically because it had a sign on it, even though I couldn't fathom what the pie room might entail. It was about the size of an elevator, and there was a small hole in one corner of the floor with arrows pointing at it. I couldn't resist lying down and peering through the hole into a surprisingly well-lit cave. The floor of the cave was covered in tiny stalagmites that looked like a random jumble of numbers. I quickly realized that what I thought was random was anything but. It was the digits of pi, starting directly under the hole and spiraling outward indefinitely. Halfway across a long, narrow, natural bridge over a tapestry of quartz, I got a little concerned that I hadn't seen anyone in the last few rooms. I finished crossing the bridge, turned right, and faced a sheer wall. I stepped forward to punch it with frustration, but I found myself falling towards it, hands and knees slamming into the wall painfully. Or, I should say, slamming into the floor, because it was actually a floor disguised as a wall. When I'd stepped forward, I'd unknowingly walked into a different gravity field. As a seraph, I was no stranger to rapidly changing gravitational orientation, but this one took me by surprise. Heaven would have had a sign posted. Earth's hell had a frustrating lack of signage. I stood upright, relative to my new orientation. Fortunately, there was only one door in this hallway. Actually, it wasn't really a door. Like most rooms in Earth's hell, the entrance to Hector's office was spanned by a curtain of pure opaque darkness. I knocked on the wall beside the curtain. "Enter," Hector, head of demon operations, called from the other side. I stepped through the doorway into a cozy, brightly lit office. It was charming, quaint, and not at all what I expected. It looked like a large-scale interior of a tree fairy house. The tree fairy world, Ashara, is a few centuries older than Earth, and tree fairies look like miniature humans with dragonfly wings. Hector's chairs were giant cushiony mushrooms. His desk was carved into a still-living tree branch that rose from the floor and snaked around the room, forming shelves and other furniture. An Asharan heatworm, a popular pet/appliance in tree fairy homes, was curled up in the corner of the room with a pot of tea simmering above it. The warm room smelled invitingly of a spice similar to cinnamon. Hector was not a tree fairy. He was a human with black hair, tan skin, and gray eyes. When he died roughly a decade earlier, he was on the cusp of admittance to heaven, so his penance in hell didn't last long. Before he left, he tentatively approached Nick and offered him a short list of suggestions for fixing some of hell's inefficiencies. Nick was flabbergasted and immediately offered him a job as head of demon operations. For the first time in almost 100 centuries, Nick had an angel on staff. That is, someone who worked for him willingly and wasn't an archdemon. Hector was excellent at his job and quickly became indispensable. "Archangel Gabriel!" exclaimed Hector. "I wasn't expecting you. How may I be of service?" I smiled. "I'm here to ask you the same thing. Nick's taking a brief leave of absence for personal reasons, and I'm covering for him. Hector frowned. How brief of an absence? I hesitated. It shouldn't take very long for Nick to rescue Eve, an hour at most. But that was if he succeeded. If he failed to rescue her, then what? He'd certainly be too emotionally unstable to take up the reins for at least several months, and there was a very real possibility he'd do something rash and be banned from all Earth-related activities permanently. Nick's absence would last between an hour and a millennium. Probably within the day, I told him, optimist that I am. Possibly longer. I'll keep you apprised. Hector relaxed considerably. Oh, that's quite agreeable. I'll tell you if I require any assistance in the meantime. So far, everything... He stopped talking abruptly when his computer beeped ominously. Problem? I asked apprehensively. Possibly, Hector replied slowly, muting the alarm. He continued, possibly to himself. These computers are nearly identical to the ones on Earth, although I've yet to hear mention of any network blips or server crashes. I laughed. No, we have servers, but they don't crash. Hector's frown deepened. Oh. If that's the common belief, then I don't expect you to have incorporated backup and recovery. Wait, what are you talking about? I asked. Hector threw up a larger projection of his monitor so I could see. It appears the Reaper database server crashed. What does that mean in real terms? I'll instruct one of my technicians to bring it back up, Hector said, sending his IT team a message. I expect it to be running again well within the hour. A more substantial concern is the potential for data loss. We had records open for hundreds of souls when the server went down. Until we regain access to the server, we won't know if those records are fully updated, missing only the most recent entries, or irreparably destroyed. What happens if the records are destroyed? I was afraid to ask, but did anyway. Hector rubbed his temples. We'll need to manually sift through the logs and retally everyone's good and evil points. How long will that take? I'll require more data to form an accurate estimate, he replied. Quite a long time, certainly. We were unable to recover any data from files that were open during the crash. As part of the apocalypse, there was a violent earthquake in Jerusalem, decimating the city and killing thousands instantly. The Reapers still hadn't gotten through the influx of souls from the other apocalyptic events, and the system was so overloaded that the new spike in deaths triggered an emergency shutdown. At least, that's the official story. I didn't know Hector very well, but it was clear even to me that he didn't believe it for a minute. In fact, it didn't seem as though the demon delivering the message was convinced either. Care to fill me in? I asked when the messenger left. Zad, replied Hector darkly. Archangel Zadkiel? I asked, surprised. He hesitated. What responsibilities has Nick entrusted to you in his absence? He told me to keep an eye on things in case of unplanned catastrophe, I told him. When he continued to hesitate, I added, I asked Nick why he chose me, and his exact words were, because I trust you. Hector relaxed. Then you must understand discretion. As I understand it, Zad is essentially one of Michael's lackeys. Technically, they rank the same, but that's probably an accurate, if ungenerous, description of their relationship, I replied diplomatically. Understood, Hector said after unpacking my reply. Zad's orchestrated minor sabotage against Nick for centuries. For example, if a human died with just under 0 points, she'd alter Heaven's records to show a positive score, then send an angel reaper to collect the soul. As you may imagine, this is less than ideal for the newly deceased and interdepartmental relations. In comparison, she would have found it quite easy to crash the server during our busiest time in ages. But doesn't it hurt her more than it hurts you? I asked. I mean, most humans are getting into heaven right away these days, so most of the souls should be her responsibility. Hector nodded. Ordinarily, yes. The last time she precipitated a fight between opposing reapers, the soul in question was resuscitated by his fellow humans and lived another decade. He didn't retain a conscious memory of the experience, but he did retain a subconscious one. This led him to indirectly influence a friend to invent the concept of an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. After that, Nick negotiated for ownership of all such disputes. If there's a discrepancy in records of a human soul, Hell is solely responsible for all interactions with that soul until the discrepancy is resolved. I frowned. This was sounding uncomfortably like one of Nick's seemingly paranoid rants. I wondered, how long will it take to sort through all those records? At the rate souls are pouring in, Hector replied, facial expression communicating the outlook was overwhelmingly grim. What are our options? I asked. Hector shook his head. In preparation for the apocalypse, all available workers have already been reassigned to Reaper duty. Our only remaining option is to send Zad a formal request for angelic assistance. Great. Where are the request forms? I asked. Thus we embarked on a tedious journey through circuitous paperwork, red tape, and frustrating bureaucracy. I won't subject you to it.